Yeah, so I mean, I started uh, playing around with Bitcoin in 2012, but I really accumulated in 2013. And in the early days, it wasn't worth much money. I had a consulting company before called the Reverse Aging Institute that I sold uh, to a guy from the Middle East. He wanted to open a anti-aging center in Beverly Hills or whatever. He loved my branding, so I spent like 30 or 40K. That's like the last money that I had at the time, and put it into branding and making a cool branding video and stuff. And I was able to sell that for like 120K. So, but with that money, I bought Bitcoin in 2013, and so it still wasn't a whole lot at the time. But over the years, it became more. The point is that I left the fiat standard in 2013, and I had a bunch of Bitcoin, in the couple thousand area in 2013, and now I'm down to significantly less than that because I've been spending it the whole time to do startups, for investments. In hindsight, just getting a job at McDonald's and holding that Bitcoin would have been the best thing to do. But I've had a ton of learning experience, and I like that. I like. I'm okay with what happened. I bought a Harley in 2015 for my birthday for myself, and it was 14 and a half Bitcoin. But I was just stoked that I could pay with Bitcoin.
Mhm.
It's like the pizza guy. He doesn't regret spending his 10,000 Bitcoin. It's just the way that things were back then. Hindsight, yeah, of course, we should have held on to it, but it's enabled me to live off Bitcoin since then, and that's been quite nice. Uh, I don't believe that the 4-year cycle was ever the 4-year cycle, not anyway in the way that we perceived it to be, like, based off the halving narrative. I did actually a bunch of extensive research on this, and it seems to have always been driven by the liquidity cycle. And so I think it was a coincidence that we had this halving cycle that kind of, for some reason, aligned perfectly uh, with the 4-year halving narrative. But it's everything seems different, right? So, we and then the 4-year cyclists would argue that someone like me would always say, "Oh, every 4-year cycle says this feels different," and they would say that we're 4-year cycle's intact, and we're now in a bear market. Um, but if our pullback is only 35%, maybe it gets worse than that. Maybe we go to 70K or something like that. Maybe get pulled back 40, 45%. But I don't see a world where we go back all the way to an 80% correction, and there's just too much happening there. And I think what's happening now is we're just uh, you're we're waiting for. We just ended quantitative tightening, right? But we were in a restrictive environment since the end of 2021. So what killed the bull market in 2021 was the fact that they announced QT, and we had hot inflation, all the kind of things that we're looking that maybe we might see in the next 6 to 24 months or something. Low inflation, low rates, inflation starting to peak back up, money printing. Uh, there's just no way that they're going to stop spending. They can't. And so 2021, we saw the beginning of QT. December 2025, the end of QT. And we're in this transitioning zone where, we're looking at, Trump's been very vocal about lower rates. He gets to appoint the guy that sits at the Fed chair, you know, uh, and we could even see markets are forward looking. So we could even see that this guy, the next Fed chair, whoever it uh, is nominated and then confirmed. And then once he's confirmed, he makes a speech and he gives this kind of tone of voice for, is he directionally dovish or hawkish? Um, but that could really set the tone for 2026. What direction is the Fed going to be, and the mindset of the Fed moving throughout this? Are they in line with getting Trump's desired at or near 1% interest rates? Um, and then we have things kicking in, like the big beautiful bill, now law, that was concluded in 2025, comes into effect, I think it was January 1st of this year. So that spending is gonna start happening now, and the spending includes things like tax rebates and tax discounts. Trump's all over there saying that this is gonna be the biggest kind of tax rebate year that the world has ever seen. We don't know that's true yet because he also promised, these $2,000 tax rebates are basically stimmy checks that now he seems to have forgotten that he mentioned them. So,
I
uh,
saw that. Yeah.
so we can only kind of speculate on what's going to happen moving forward. But uh, from what it seems, you got just crazy spending. GDP growth is forecasted to hit, probably 5% plus by the end of the year, which is nuts. So that just creates more spending, more money in the system, better confidence in markets. And I think that we're moving, we're going to follow this liquidity cycle. So that's the most important thing to watch right now is just like, what's happening on global M2, US M2, uh, bond markets, things like that. So I'm cautiously optimistic about this year. Uh, and it doesn't, I mean, it doesn't feel good to be all in crypto right now when equities and metals are ripping. But I think that it's always Bitcoin and crypto has always been a story about patience and only truly rewards those who can endure times like this where the markets are completely apathetic and everyone thinks that crypto is dead. Um, and it's very much not. I mean, a lot of people point to stable coins. That's cool. And I think that'll help with people to understand how digital assets work, including altcoins and Bitcoin and stuff. But uh, it feels so quiet right now and so dead. And historically, these have been the best times to buy. So could Bitcoin go lower? Yep. Maybe I don't know. I guess the ultimate low would probably be somewhere around last season's all-time high, 65, 69,000, whatever. I'm okay with that. Um, you know, if it does go back down to there, but it doesn't seem like there's so much more downside, at least for Bitcoin. Altcoins, I'm not really sure. But for Bitcoin, seems limited. And I think when you look back in a few years from now, buying around this time, being in the market at this time is probably the best time to be in it.
Hey, you made it to the end of the clip. That means you're probably enjoying this. And if so, just know that you can catch us live every Tuesday and Thursday at 12 p.m. Eastern. And if you want to see the full version of this episode, you can click the link in the description down below. Otherwise, YouTube thinks that you will enjoy this next.